So these are a couple answers to bitbutter's questions. He asked a couple questions on his latest vid. I'll answer question number 2 first. Get it out of the way. Question number 2. Do you agree with this statement, basically? The state will kill a person before it will give up trying to take the product of that person's labor. Do I agree with that statement? Um, well, I mean, it depends on the state, of course, I guess. But what brings me to mind is one incident where Thoreau was thrown in jail because he disagreed with paying his taxes because the United States was going to war against a country which he really felt he shouldn't go to war against. He didn't want his money supporting that. So he was thrown into jail and was sat in jail for some time until somebody else came along and paid his taxes for him and let him out. But the state didn't kill Thoreau in this instance. The state merely just threw him into jail, right? What the state will do is in proportion to what you are doing to resist it, the state will use that same measure. Whatever measure you use, the state will meet that measure back out to you, right? So if you run away from the state will, come and get you back, physically force you back. If you brandish weapons and start shooting people, the state will start shooting people. So I think what a just state will do is will use proportional force. Proportional to the force that you're using to resist it, it will use the same force to enforce its laws. So you won't necessarily get killed. I mean, you always have the option, even in some of the most worst tyrannies that ever have been, like for example the British Empire. You have the force of conscientious objection. You can just go to jail if you want to. Okay. Question number 1 I think is a more interesting question. Here's how he phrases it. The state demands from some people that they hand over money for projects they don't support. Well, yes. In the cases where the person would not willingly have given the money to state to support those projects, the state is stealing by taking that money under threat of violence. Well, stealing is a loaded term here, right? Stealing, in fact, is a moral term. Right? Stealing something where we bring in this word should and normativity, right? You should not steal. It is not moral to steal, right? So, I mean, if we rephrase your question in a little bit less mellifluous fashion, basically it seems like what you're asking is it moral for the state to tax you and enforce the tax laws upon you by proportional force? I think that's the question. So it then becomes a subset of the general question, well, where do these morals come from anyways, right? My personal answer to this is morals come from in intersubjective dialogue and intersubjective negotiation, right? They arise basically from society. And so, the society has the right, if the society decides in its corporate fashion that it's moral to tax you, then it is moral to tax you, and it would not be considered theft. So now, if you want to claim that it is theft for the state to tax you, right? Then what you have to do is you have to define where this morality is coming from. In fact, this is exactly I think Veritas 48's point here. Why are you pulling in these? Why are you pulling in these morals? Where are they coming from? If it's not God that's underwriting these morals, where are they coming from? I looked at a few of your past videos, and it seems like the only place where you really talk about this is you talk about something called the ideal observer theory, where you say you should do something if the ideal observer would think that you should do it. Notice you really haven't gotten away from the should there, right? You've introduced this moral, this being, right? The ideal observer is supposedly omniscient. It knows everything. It knows the consequences of all things. Sounds like a lot like God to me, right? But you can't really even state the theory without stating it in should terms, right? You say you should do something if the ideal observer thinks you should do it, right? Yeah. So yeah, I guess I don't know what else to say here. I mean, you need to clarify. Second of all, it's not really obvious to me that the ideal observer would think that taxation is not good. I mean, if you could like clarify that a little bit, you know, or maybe you've given up on the ideal observer theory. It's been a while since you've talked about morality. So yeah, if you could just talk about morality, talk about where you think these morals come from, and then use that in order to derive the fact that taxation is theft. I appreciate your video though because it really clarified for me. Um, it answered for me a couple of mysteries. First mystery, I guess, was personal. I mean, it's like I did drift away from libertarianism. I have impeccable libertarian credentials, by the way. I was an anarchist for several years, and I stood out in front of Kmart and collected signatures to put libertarians on the ballot. Okay, you can vote for libertarians in the state of Indiana today because I helped put them on the ballot. But I drifted away from it at the same time that I drifted away from being very religiously conservative. And it's obvious to me now why that's so. I mean, if your source of morality is not some objective standard like the objectivist claim or like the Veritas 48s of the world claim, it becomes obvious that the morality comes about by intersubjective negotiation. And in those circumstances, yeah, then the state determines what is moral and what is not, right? Um, and also it clarified for me why the religious right is so libertarian in its outlook, right? Because if they're thinking that the state doesn't uh, isn't the source of these moralities, or intersubjective negotiation isn't the source of these moralities, they come from someplace else, then of course, it's a very simple syllogism, right? You shouldn't take stuff that people don't want you to take. Taxation is taking stuff that you don't want people to take. Therefore, God will smite you if you take stuff, if you tax people, right? I mean, it's a very simple syllogism then. So, at any rate, thanks for your vid. I look forward to any response you care to give.